Hello and welcome to Iridium Rock and Metal Reviews. Today I'm going to do episode 2 of discussing the classics, and I've got with me Mark Cloer. How you doing, mate?
I'm great, Lee. How are you?
Yeah, good. Better than you. You're up at 6:54.
Yeah, it's still dark here. I don't think the chickens have even gotten up yet, but we're okay.
Thanks for doing that, mate. Because
I've got my Java to keep me going here, so
yeah. Well, this is a reasonable time for me. It's usually I have to do them late at night for you guys from over the water, but obviously today it's 5 to 12, so good time for me. But
Yep.
so we're going to talk about Heaven and Hell, Black Sabbath, Heaven and Hell, and first of all, what we're going to do on this episode is always talk about the cover first, because I don't know about you. I spoke to the guys last night when we did the Def Leppard High and Dry, and covers or album covers back then, especially when everyone bought records,
definitely
a real important part of the listening part of it as well, because it's something you wanted to do. I mean, I even bought albums that through the cover alone.
I did too. A lot of them.
Exactly, like unknown bands, and I'll just pick up the cover in the record shop and think, well, you know what, I'll give that a go, and it for me, this cover is an iconic cover. It's one of the most iconic images ever in metal, really. What about your views on the cover, mate?
Well, let me backtrack a little bit. The first Sabbath album I ever bought was actually Live Evil, and I bought it exactly for what you just mentioned. I bought it for the album cover. I had heard of Black Sabbath. I'm sure I had heard Iron Man. I'm sure I had heard War Pigs. I'm sure I probably heard Sweet Leaf, Fairies Wear Boots, prior to all this. But I vividly remember standing in the record store, mesmerized, holding that full-size LP of Live Evil. Just absolutely transfixed by the cover. And I eventually bought it on cassette, because cassettes were just coming into vogue then, and you could take the music with you. So that was the first album I actually bought by Sabbath, and then I went back a little later and bought Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules. It's just a classic album cover. Like you said, the covers back then were very thought-provoking. Sabbath, Scorpions, UFO had some of the most thought-provoking album covers of all time.
Oh, and definitely.
Unfortunately, bands nowadays don't put as much emphasis on that, I don't think.
No.
But yeah, back in the day, that was a big part of the package, was the album cover.
Oh, definitely. I mean, I suppose I actually heard this album when it actually came out, so I was only 10 years old.
Right.
So I suppose, didn't think too much of the cover back then, being a 10-year-old, but I just thought, I'm into metal, which I was. That's pretty cool. That's a cool album cover, a bit controversial, but didn't think of it really that way at the time, I suppose, being 10. But a really great album cover. I love it. And you just mentioned, it's the first time Live Evil was the first album for you. And I was similar to you. I probably heard the hits. I remember having the Black Sabbath Greatest Hits, or listening to the Black Sabbath Greatest Hits before Dio joined the band. And they're the only songs I really knew of Ozzy in the band. Now, I know that obviously Black Sabbath, for a lot of people, was split, aren't they, on which singer they prefer.
Oh, yeah.
You're a massive Tony Martin fan.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So, that's...
I'm in the minority.
Yeah, but, I mean, he's not, as far as my favourite Sabbath singers, he's not my least favourite, put it that way. Dio's probably my favourite. And I know they've had a couple of albums with other people. You've had Glenn Hughes. That was a great album as well.
Oh, yeah.
But, as far as Ozzy was concerned, I've never resonated with his voice that much. I think that some of the songs that Sabbath did, I enjoyed with him in it. Probably the most enjoyable one for me was Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath.
Right.
Probably. Maybe the Dio wouldn't even be able to sing that one that high. But, he's... just his tone wasn't for me. So when Dio joined the band, Well, I mean, I didn't know much about Dio either. I think this is the first time I heard his voice. I didn't hear him in Rainbow until later on. But well, completely changed the band's sound, and obviously Tony Iommi completely changed the sound for his voice. A great choice, an
Well,
absolutely great choice.
I think I'm a year older than you are, but again, I wasn't. I was. I guess I was 11 years old when this album came out, and at 10 or 11 years old, you can't really analyze music all that deeply. I mean,
No.
you know what sounds good to your ears, but you don't know a whole lot about what you're hearing.
Yeah.
But I always wondered, and maybe you can answer this, being in Britain, how well was Dio received when he first replaced Ozzy over there? Because I mean, it had to be kind of a shocker for an American to replace Ozzy in this quintessentially British band.
Excellent question, because I was actually thinking about mentioning this. So I knew someone who went to see an Aussie fan who was a lot older than me. So probably about 15, 17, 18 years older than me, maybe a little bit more. Can't remember now. And he actually went to see Sabbath, not knowing that Dio was the singer, because back then it's not like it is now. Sometimes the first time you know the singer's joined the band is when you get the album. You don't even know it. It's like now, you know who's gonna join years, weeks before the new album comes out. There's a new singer, but back then didn't know.
I've got a buddy that lives up in Pittsburgh. I think he's 11 years older than I am. I actually called him because he's a big Sabbath fan. He actually saw Sabbath and Blue Oyster Cult on that infamous Black and Blue tour. Sabbath was touring Heaven and Hell at the time. And he said Dio here was fairly well known for Rainbow, but he wasn't a household word.
Yeah.
Not that he is now, compared to Ozzy, but he was not a very well-known singer. But when he went to see him, it was kind of a shock.
Yeah, it wasn't that guy who I spoke to. He wasn't well received in England at that concert. I mean, right. I don't know if it changed over time when everyone got to hear what a great singer he was.
Right.
But he wasn't. He was an Aussie fan as well, so he basically was really disappointed. He couldn't believe it, Yeah, I could never. I've always been a Dio fan, so I couldn't understand anyone who didn't like Dio's voice. I still can't. But that's it's opinions, isn't it? It's just what you like. But So I think he had a bit of trouble at the beginning, and you can understand all those years. But I mean, they wasn't exactly doing well with Ozzy, was they? In the end, them last few albums. So I haven't heard them intensely. I haven't gone into the catalogue that much, but from what I hear, they wasn't doing that brilliant with Ozzy in the end. So, I think they needed a bit of this, bit fresh, definitely.
Yeah.
So
they were definitely grasping on those last two albums.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, a lot of turmoil in the band, so it was needed, Let's quickly talk about the production. Martin Birch the late Martin Birch, only died a little while ago, did the production for this. I mean, he was all over a lot of metal albums at the time, wasn't he? Maiden, he did a lot for Maiden, some good albums. So I love the production. It's really bassy, and I think it really suited what they were doing. I mean, it even got even bassier with the next album. I think with Mob Rules, that was like ramped right up. But with this, it was really bassy as well. I love the production. Everything's clear. Sounds really epic. The whole album.
Yeah, you can hear every instrument clearly.
Yeah.
Like you said, the bass is very upfront on this album.
Yeah.
A lot of time bass tends to get buried in the mix.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can't even tell there's a bass being played there, but there's no doubt on this album.
Yeah. I mean, I love a lot of these guitar solos on this one. They're really sort of got that really brilliant, like echoey sort of feel, a real live sort of feel, like they're in a massive arena, like, I don't know what sort of effects they had on those guitar solos, but it was made to feel huge, wasn't it? The whole album. Great guitar sound. Right then, mate. So what we're going to do, there's only two of us because we've only got 8 tracks, so it's not, but back then there was quite a few long ones on here as well, but you didn't get that much on an album. So 4 tracks each. And it seems like, not on purpose, but I've sort of grabbed a lot of the more well-known tracks, I suppose, but they're all good as far as I'm concerned on this album. So if you're ready to go, mate, kicking off the album, Neon Nights.
Yeah, Neon Nights is what a way to start the album. I mean, they just kicked the door open and went full throttle with this one. I mean, it is pedal to the metal. And when I say metal, I mean metal. This song to me is like a rallying cry, a call to arms. We're the new Sabbath. We're bigger. We're better. Come along for the ride. That's the way I interpret it. I mean, Dio had such a way of lyrically, you never knew exactly what he was trying to say. It was all open to interpretation, and I guess that was by design. I mean, that was one of his little tricks, that he used, and just, it grabs your attention and makes you pay attention to the lyrics. What is he trying to say here? And that's what I interpret it as. It's just like I said, a call to arms for the metal community. Sabbath is back and we're better.
I suppose lyrically, if you're like Dio really delved obviously into the fantasy side of lyrics. I suppose if you're doing that sort of thing, fantasy lyrics, you can do what you like. You sort of got so much scope, because does it really have to make a lot of sense? I don't, you could say whatever, he could say whatever you want. And sometimes I looked at the lyrics and thought, what the hell does that mean? But does it have to make sense? It doesn't really, but he did project sort of all sorts of, in your head, thinking, sort of wonder and thinking, what does it actually mean? He's one of those lyricists that propelled you elsewhere. There's not many that can do that. Yeah.
He was a poet. I mean,
yeah.
He painted pictures with his lyrics. Like you said, it took you somewhere else, and especially Rainbow and Sabbath especially. I don't think it was quite as prominent in his solo material, but the stuff he did in Rainbow, stuff he did in Sabbath, you can't listen to those songs and not be transported to another time, another place as you listen to those lyrics. I mean, it's just, he was brilliant. And nobody does that kind of lyric writing today.
Totally right there, man. It was a great kickoff for the album as well. Some great comments there, mate. So, next track, if you're done, Children of the Sea. So this is you had the going from the fast Neon Nights, like you said, out of the gates, to a sort of real epic song. I love the two sides he had lots of sides to his voice, Dio, but I love it when they used to do their little, his little whispery type voice, really sort of like high over the sort of clean guitars before it goes into the song, and the power chords from Tony Iommi they're just mad. They're just so headbanging, but slow, sort of that sort of first sort of plodding sort of song that they did. I love over the solo, and they've got like I suppose the best way to describe it, and they did it quite a bit on it throughout the Dio era, is those sort of choir type voices, that go in the background. I love that, the way they did that. And this is one of those songs. But the ending for me, lyrically, the sky is falling down, the sun is going black. It was just, that is another one, like you said, the lyrics in this one, sort of that feeling of doom. I mean, I really felt that at the end of this. The sky is falling down. It really puts some visions in your head, almost horror visions. If that could happen. Absolutely amazing song.
Well, Dio, actually, I've got a stack of Sabbath books. I buy every Sabbath book that comes out, especially the ones that deal more with the post-Ozzy era. And Dio actually intended this song to be an ecological warning, for almost like a Greenpeace type message.
Yeah.
Look what we're doing to the earth. And that all plays in, the lyrics you just mentioned. That just wraps it all up at the end. I don't think he intended to change the world by any means with these lyrics, but it definitely, when you analyze the lyrics like we've both been doing, you see where he's going with it, and again, it's very poignant for today.
Yeah.
Even though it was written 40 years ago now, it's very timely.
I suppose, I didn't think about them in any way like that, because when you're 10, even back then, no one really thought about like they do now, about the way what we're doing to the earth. But yeah, I mean, now, if it was intended for that, very clever for that time, because it wasn't really at the forefront of everyone's mind back then, was it, in 1980?
Right.
Yeah, great song. One of the highlights of the album for me. Next, mate, Lady Evil.
Lady Evil. Ronnie had a fascination, I guess I would call it, with the magical, mystical women, especially throughout his early career. In Rainbow, he sang about the Tarot woman. He sang about the Lady of the Lake. On this album, Lady Evil. And then next album, he sang about the Country Girl. Yeah. And rest assured, when he was singing about the Country Girl, he wasn't talking about Ellie Mae Clampett or Daisy Duke. But Lady Evil it's a very catchy song, very commercial sounding, a little bit rainbowish.
Yeah.
I know there was a lot of, back in the day, a lot of people, and I think Ozzy might be the one that had started it, call them Black Rainbow. And that song, I can definitely, that sounds like something he might have brought from the Rainbow days.
Yeah.
It fits well. Great song. I love the tempo of it. Could have been a good radio hit, but again, they didn't release it as a single, and I doubt it ever got played too much live. Probably did in the very early days.
Yeah, I caught it on there. I don't know if you've seen this, mate. Did you see there's a live video out when they was playing as Heaven and Hell. It was filmed in America somewhere. I can't remember exactly where it was, and they did
Probably
this song.
Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, it was great live then. I mean, the Dio, even at that age, and was singing it perfectly as well. Great thumping bass in that song. The way it starts off, brilliant. Absolutely love it.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, like I said, no weak tracks on this album, mate. Just ones that are really good to, amazing. So next one is the title track, Heaven and Hell. So lots of bands, artists have tried to emulate this sound of this, and that sort of slow gallop, if you like. I love the way it starts off straight in with the chords at the beginning. It's the sort of song, it's strange, isn't it? I don't know how long this is, 6.5 minutes, nearly 7 minutes. You thought this would be sort of the song that would start off with one of those little clean guitar bits at the beginning, maybe with Ronnie singing quietly at the beginning, but no, it's straight into the song. And like I said, that lovely little bit of that bass line, that gallop, and Ronnie James Dio's voice, man. Oh God. I mean, it just cutting through that effect he's got on his voice, it's sort of echoey, sort of like I said before, it makes you feel like you're in a huge stadium or something. Some great production all across the album. Love the drawn out solo, the notes, Tony Iommi. Yet again, that really lovely sort of echoey sort of sound on his guitar, making it sound really huge. And then of course the climax at the end, when the song goes a bit frenetic, and some brilliant lyrics all the way through the song. Absolutely love it. Heaven and Hell is just never gets old, does it, mate? And it's, like I said, bands can get nowhere near that now. They try, but
well, that's got to be their signature song without lying.
Yeah.
And the original song that they recorded was actually over 8 minutes. And
all right.
They pared it down to that 6.5 minutes or whatever it ended up being.
Oh
You know,
man, I would like the 8-minute one.
yeah, yeah. That bass line, interestingly enough, I can't talk this morning. I'm not awake yet. Jeff Nichols actually wrote that bass line.
All right.
He was in a band called Quartz prior to being drafted into Sabbath, and they had a song called Mainline Riders, which is a great song if you haven't heard it. Very Sabbathy in its own right, because Iommi actually produced that album. But
great. Yeah.
Jeff nicked the bass line from that song for Heaven and Hell. And then when Geezer came back, Geezer had stated that if it had been up to him, he would have come up with something a little more complicated, a little more sophisticated. But honestly, I don't think the song needs anything else.
No, definitely not, mate. Definitely not. It's a perfect song. It's a perfect metal song. It's just brilliant. Right, so probably one of the number 5, probably one of the more deeper cuts, I suppose, if there is some on there. Wishing Well.
Yeah, that's a very bouncy song. Another one that's very commercial sounding. Lyrically, it deals with superstition, Ronnie's, involvement or fascination with superstitions. Just another one that almost sounded like it could have been a Rainbow song. But yeah, I love
definitely.
It actually, I've rediscovered it. As I said, I've kind of forgotten about the song a little bit over the years. But as I was preparing for this, I reintroduced myself to it. It's a really good song that probably should have been released as a single.
These songs, these deeper cuts, if you like, Wishing Well, Lady Evil, there's another one to come that you're going to talk about. They probably seem even a little bit more fresher because they're not being played as much, through your life. When you think of this album, Children of the Sea, Heaven and Hell, they're the ones that, you've heard a million times. But yeah, there's they sort of do sound even a bit more fresher, these sort of deeper cuts. So yeah, I love every track. Wishing Well's also a great track, like you said. Definitely, now you're saying it, I didn't really think about it until we were talking now. Definitely that one and Lady Evil, Rainbowish, for sure. Definitely right there, mate, for sure. Yeah. Excellent, mate. Right, the next one is Die Young. So this is the one, I think this is the first song I heard of this album because my brother had it on I think a 12-inch single. I remember seeing the cover, and it was a live picture, like a live photo, and it had Ronnie in the middle with big, like, white, looked like a dress near enough, not a gown that going to the ground. And I was just mesmerised listening to the song. Obviously, it's, apart from that little bit at the beginning, it's a fast and frenetic, bit like Neon Nights, that sort of thing. I love the bit though when it, you'd expect when it's this fast and this menacing and heavy. I love the way it just goes into that little first chorus, when it dies right down. And yeah, again, Ronnie's little, his sort of higher voice that he does, his softer voice, really clever. Really clever. You wouldn't expect that. Not many bands would think of that, but dying right down into an almost sort of dreamlike bit with the chorus. And it probably is most aggressive, I reckon, Ronnie on this one. Really going for it. He had his on the heavy parts. And one of the best solos on the album. I was listening to it I was listening to it again, like you did, going through the songs, and that bit, you got the chords crashing. I might have to actually do it here, mate, a guitar sound, but the da-na-na-na-na, wow, them bits in between the chords and oh man, and really, and like I said, that guitar sound that they've got going on through this record, that sort of echoey, sort of big sound on this song, it really stands out. Absolutely love Die Young. And I'm not a real, as you know, I'm not a real fast, when it comes to fast songs, I'm more into the sort of medium sort of song. But this is a classic. Yeah. Absolutely brilliant, mate. Love it.
That song's got it all. I mean, it's got fast parts, it's got slow parts, and it just fits so well. Seamless the way they put that song together, and the lyrics of it kind of sad to think about it now that Ronnie's gone. You know, he talked about maybe it's better to die when you're young and full of life instead of having to deal with the things that you have to deal with later in life as you get old, knowing, you know, what he eventually succumbed to and his last couple of years, you know, were not good ones.
No.
Just to know what he went through, the song has more relevance now.
Yeah, definitely, mate. Definitely. Okay, so probably the deepest cut, maybe, on the album, Walk Away.
Yeah. Walk Away, probably my least favorite on the album, but it is not a bad song at all. Again, I've reintroduced myself to it, and I have a new appreciation for it now. It's very bouncy, and another one that's very radio friendly. Kind of untypical for Sabbath lyrically. I can imagine any number of other 80s metal bands doing this song. It's another one that's kind of open to interpretation in his lyrics, but the way I interpret it, there's a line in there where he says something about trying to hide the child. I think he's talking about the female in question possibly being underage. That's the way I take it. You know, jailbait.
Yeah.
I may be totally wrong, but that's the way I interpret it. Just walk away, you know, not worth the trouble.
Funnily enough, there was a lot of bands, weren't there? Rock bands and metal bands having that sort of subject matter, not opening to interpretation actually up front in the 80s. And, you know, some of the songs now, you like hold your head in your hands thinking, oh, what, you know, why did they do that? You know, but I don't know. Yeah, I'm with you on this one though, mate. It's probably my least favourite track. Yeah. Definitely with you on that one.
There's only one Dio era Sabbath song that I just do not like, and it's on the next album. But yeah, even these weaker cuts, and I say weaker cuts on this album, they're great songs. They're head and shoulders above what a lot of other bands that, you know, were around at the time were doing. And yeah, I love every song on this album. If I had to rank them though, I'd say Walk Away's probably at the bottom.
Yeah. Oh, without a doubt. Totally with you on that one, mate. So, a real classic closes off the album. Lonely is the word. I mean, it couldn't have got. We talked yesterday on the. Sorry to bring it up again on the Leopard album, finishing off with No, No, No. Probably, you know, for us, it was not a good choice. But I mean, it was probably good for back then. It was a heavy song for the British public, especially. But when you're talking about good closes on an album, Lonely is the word is it's a perfect, absolutely perfect song. Ronnie Dio's vocals again, and I know we keep mentioning it. Them chords at the beginning, man, that kick it off. Big shout out to Geezer Butler on this one, and the drumming as well on this from Bill Ward, absolutely superb. You don't realise how long this solo is until I was listening to it the other day. So there's a huge solo, probably for about a minute and a bit. And then Ronnie comes in with a little bit of singing, only for one line. And then it goes back into another 2 minutes of a solo. But I've also, on the end of this, I don't know if you're a Zeppelin fan, mate. Oh, yeah.
Not a huge Zeppelin fan. I mean, I like some of their stuff, but I never got into them to the degree I did Sabbath.
Well, I'm exactly like you. I'm not a huge Zeppelin fan either. You know, I don't mind a few tracks, but they have got that as a solo's right nearing its end on this. It's got that little bit of Stairway to Heaven type thing going on in the background.
Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed that, but
hadn't made the connection, but yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. There's like a going on exactly like it did at the end of Stairway to Heaven, but you know, I don't know. perhaps it's just a bit of an ode to Zeppelin, I don't know, but it's just an epic track. It's just an epic track. Ronnie at his best. Just love everything about it, mate. It's just such a good closer, such a good bit sad as well. You know, lyrically, it makes you feel really sad as well. But I can't think of a better song to close. You know, looking at the album, you could have closed it off probably with Heaven and Hell, maybe. But I think Lonely in the World is a perfect choice to close it out.
Yeah. Full disclosure, that is my favorite song on the album.
And I've got it down as mine as well. I've actually put down my favourite song as well. So.
I think that song is vastly underrated. Just not as well known as it should have been. I love, probably my second favorite would be Children of the Sea, but Lonely is the Word. It's just so emotional. Lyrically, again, Dio's lyrics just paint a picture of, what's that one line? I've been higher than stardust. I've been seen upon the sun.
Oh, yeah.
Who writes shit like that? I mean, honestly.
Yeah.
You can't listen to that and not, you know, like you said, be transported to another place in time. It's just, and that song's just got so many textures. The guitar solo in that song, at least according to one of my many books, is actually Tony's all-time favorite solo that he ever performed.
Yeah.
And I can totally understand why.
Yeah.
It's just a great song that should have been bigger than it was. Yeah. It almost borders on being a ballad, but it's got that edge at the same time that elevates it, you know, I think beyond ballad stage. But yeah, just a great song.
It's brilliant, mate. It's absolutely brilliant, and yeah, it's my favourite song as well. It's an absolutely superb, epic song. One of my favourites that Dio's ever sung. Maybe could even be my favourite if I actually sat down and thought about it. But no. So that's it, mate. We've gone through the whole album. I've loved doing it because, you know, he's been a part of my life for 40 years.
It's funny you should bring that up. To put that in perspective, all right, think back to 1980. That doesn't seem like yesterday, but it doesn't seem like that long ago in the grand scheme.
No.
But if you go back to 1980 and take 40 years away from that,
yeah,
World War II was just getting started.
Yeah, I know.
That kind of puts it in perspective.
It's mad, and what an album! Sort of, you know, the difference they made on this to what they had before. It totally changed the band's sound, and you know, and they sort of, you know, going back to a little bit about one of your favourite singers, Tony Martin, and sort of carried on that sort of, because he had the voice for it, didn't he? So they sort of carried on this similar sort of sound as well, and some great music made with Tony Martin as well. So, you know, you could talk all night about Tony, couldn't you?
Oh, yeah. And you know, it's really amazing that this album turned out as well as it did, because there was a lot of turmoil at the time. You know, not just Dio replacing Ozzy, but Geezer left.
Yeah.
They brought Jeff Nichols in originally to be a rhythm guitarist, and then they eventually moved him over to bass as they were working on these songs. At some point, they moved him to keyboards, and they brought in Craig Gruber, who had played with Dio and Rainbow, to fill the bass slot. And they recorded the demos with Craig Gruber, and then Geezer comes back at the last minute and re-recorded. The only song on this album that's actually a full band participation is Neon Nights. They wrote that one after after Geezer came back. The rest of the songs, Geezer really wasn't involved with. And another piece of trivia, 4 of these songs actually existed in their earliest form when Ozzy was still in the band. Those songs were Lady Evil, Die Young, Heaven and Hell, and what was the other one? Children of the Sea.
Wow.
I'm sure they didn't have titles and they were probably totally different songs. But can you imagine? Iommi claims he still has a recording of Ozzy singing an early version of Children of the Sea. Can you imagine that?
Well, it'd be blooming different. Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't imagine. Well, I suppose you can't imagine sometimes. I mean, even that Live Evil album, even though obviously, you know how I feel about Dio. He's one of my favourite vocalists, if not my favourite vocalist of all time. But isn't it funny how even he was singing those Aussie songs, even though he'd done a good job, you know, it just didn't. It was okay, but it wasn't how you wanted to hear them. You know, I much prefer Dio singing the Dio songs.
Sure.
You know, they just didn't sound, when you take over, I suppose, from an iconic vocalist, even though for me his voice is no way near as good as Dio's, it's still hard to emulate those songs and make them sound like they were, you know, and he never was going to do that. But, you know, they wasn't my favourite songs on the Live Evil album.
Right.
The Dio songs were, you know. But no,
Ozzy was the perfect choice for that first era of Sabbath. I mean, nobody else could have done those songs the way he did.
No.
I give him full credit for what he did in the band, but by the time Dio came in, they were going in a different direction.
Credit where credit's due, man.
Dio to take them to the next level.
Yeah, I mean, credit where credit's due. What Ozzy and Sabbath did for metal altogether, wasn't it? That early on, that first album. I mean, man, there was nothing like that either, was there?
Yeah,
unbelievable. And
one other thing I wanted to mention about Heaven and Hell. You have to remind yourself, or I have to remind myself, that Bill Ward actually played on this album, because Vinny is so associated with the Dio era. You have to kind of remind yourself when you're listening to Heaven and Hell, that's Bill Ward. And I will go on record as saying, I think this is Bill Ward's strongest performance on this album. He was an absolute beast on this album. And according to accounts, he doesn't even remember recording this album. he was in such a bad place, you know, with his addictions, and both his parents died within a year, and that's why he left the band in the first place. But he was out of it when he recorded this album. But man, what a performance. Just imagine if he'd have been in top form, what he could have done.
Yeah. I mean, it must have been so strange for all the band to completely, the sound is just like, it doesn't even sound the same band, does it? The whole album, just completely different band. You can't believe it's the same band. That's the singer. Unbelievable. Okay then, mate. It's been great breaking this down with you. One of my favourite albums of all time. So thanks for doing it.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed being back.
Yeah, it's cool, man. And we're going to have you on again, hopefully. You're up for some more?
We'll come up with something.
Great. So I hope everyone enjoyed the video. You can leave your comments below. What do you think of Heaven and Hell? Do you prefer the Dio Sabbath, or do you prefer the Aussie Sabbath, or the Tony Martin Sabbath? But let us know in the comments below and what you think of Heaven and Hell, and I'll see you next time.